Well, hi, and thanks for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. Today's another dreary day here in New England. It's raining off and on, so we'll try not to make this too long of a video. Hopefully we won't get caught out here in the rain. But today I was going to mount a scope on my Diana Model 46 air rifle, and I thought for a second, well, hey, why not bring some folks along and I'll show you the way that I mount a scope. Now, some of you have been mounting scopes on your rifles for years and you know what you're doing. You're probably not going to find much use for this video. You might even find a few things that you don't think are right about this video, but we've all got our ways of doing things, and this is my way. So hopefully you'll learn something, or hopefully you'll have some tips on what I can do in order to better my system. But at any rate, let's get started. So one of the first things you might want to get your hands on before you mount a scope is a torque wrench. Now I'll confess that I haven't had a torque wrench very long. This is the very first scope that I've ever mounted with a torque wrench. I've always done it just by feel, but after having a torque wrench, I can tell you that I think I've been over tightening my scopes just a little bit. So this is a handy device, and it keeps you from damaging your scope. Anyway, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to degrease all of the mating surfaces. And by that I mean the rings where the clamps are, and also where the rings contact the scope. And we're also going to degrease the rails of the rifle itself. So we'll begin with the scope rings, I should say. And we just want to do the dovetails just to get any greases or oils off them to help ensure a good mating surface. We're also going to degrease where the scope ring meets the scope itself, right in the little saddle. Same thing on this one, and then in the clamp itself where the dovetails meet, like so. And don't forget the tops. We'll do inside the tops again, just to ensure that there's no grease or oil that'll promote any slippage. Some folks say that your screws should be oiled, and that the torque specs work just fine with an oiled screw. I don't know, that just seems counterintuitive to me, but it could be correct. I don't know. But I don't oil the screws. In fact, if they look really oily, I'll degrease those as well. Okay, so we forgot to do the rails on the rifle, so that's the next step. A little more alcohol. Now this is 91% rubbing alcohol. You can buy it at your local pharmacy, and it's ideal for degreasing rifles, for scope mounts or what have you. It leaves no residue, and it does a really good job of cutting through any oils or greases that might be lingering. Okay, now this particular rifle has a little recoil lug that's screwed right into the rear of the sight base, and we're going to utilize that recoil lug by putting the ring right up against it to help eliminate any scope creep. So we can slide that ring right up against the recoil lug like that. Now your gun may not have this feature, or it might have one that looks completely different, or it may just have a series of holes where you can use a scope mount, a set of rings that has what they call an arrestor pin, and that threads down through the mount and into the hole. Or sometimes it's just a press fit roll pin that you tap down into the hole, and that will also keep that rear ring from sliding around, and that'll help with scope creep. If it doesn't completely eliminate it, I'd be very surprised. So at any rate, we're going to utilize this recoil lug by tightening the clamp right up against that lug. Now most manufacturers recommend between 20 and 25 foot-pounds of inch-pound torque, not foot-pounds, inch-pounds, between 20 and 25. I have this set at about 22.5, and because it's a mechanical device, I don't expect that it's all that well calibrated anyway, so I could be anywhere from 20 to 25 foot-pounds, but I put it right in the middle, which I think is just about right. And we're going to go ahead and crank it down until we hear the torque wrench let us know. It'll just click when you've reached the proper specification. There's 1, 2, I always give it 3 just to be sure that it's locked down. So that rear mount is right where it needs to be, that rear ring. It's not going to budge. Then we do the front ring, but we're going to leave that one loose so that we can slide it back and forth. So we'll just get that tightened down enough where it won't fall off, but where we can slide it back and forth without too much effort. The scope will mount. What I like to do is try to center the saddle of the scope in between the rings. So on this particular one, we're going to slide backwards. And this is all going to be changed when we figure out what our eye relief is. This is just where I like to begin. Take your top ring. And the idea here is as you screw down the ring cap, you want to try to keep the same amount of distance on each side between the top and rear, top and bottom of the rings. And I'll show you what I mean. Take a look at this photograph. You'll notice that the gap is about the same on each side of the scope. And that's what you want to try to achieve. And that just helps to keep the scope from canting one way or the other as you finish tightening it down, because you're tightening it down nice and even on either side. So sometimes you have to back off on one side and then adjust the other side to get it down, which is exactly what I'm doing right here. Perfect. So that's about the same on either side. And we'll repeat that process with the rear ring as well. The scope is still free to slide back and forth and from side to side, and of course it's going to take that ring with it too if we don't lock that down. Loosen that just a little more so we can slide it. There we go. Okay, so the next step is going to be to try to get our proper eye relief, and we're going to slide the scope back and forth until we get a nice open sight picture. We don't want any fuzziness on the edges, and we don't want any tunnel vision where the image is a lot smaller than the rear lens. You want to have the rear lens and the image be just about the same size. That's just about right. Okay, so now that we've got that set where we want it, we're going to go ahead and lock down the front ring. And we're going to do that again at about 22.5 foot-pounds. So just bring it down. 1, 2, 3. Alright, so that front ring is locked in too. Now we have to get the scope so it's nice and level with the rifle. So the first thing to do is to level the rifle. I have a little level here. It's not the best tool. I should invest in a better one, but it works, so we're going to use this today. Good, so that's level. And assuming your scope has a flat top, you can do the same thing on the scope. If not, just take the gun out of the rest again and turn it by hand. Until you get it until it appears to be straight up and down. Good. Okay, now we're going to reset our torque wrench, and to tighten down the rings, most manufacturers recommend about 15 foot-pounds, inch-pounds. I keep saying foot-pounds because I'm used to doing heavier stuff than this, but at any rate, 15 inch-pounds. So we're going to readjust our torque wrench down to 15. Which is right about there. Perfect. And we're going to again try to keep these gaps about the same. corner to corner. Snug it. Snug the opposite corner. Come back over here. Snug it. Do the opposite corner. Just like that. Same thing here. We're going to look and make sure our gap is roughly the same on either side. Bring it down. Okay, so now we can snug this one up. Snug it. Snug. 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 The gaps should be good. Yes, they are. Excellent. So now we're going to just lock these down with the proper torque specs. One, 3 clicks. 2, 3. I'm pretty sure that before I had this torque wrench, I was torquing these things down a little too hard. So it's good to have, although I've never damaged a scope before, there's always a first time. So again, if you put a lot of scopes on your rifles, if you do this a lot, invest in a torque wrench. If you only do this once in a great while, then go by feel. I've heard it said that you go until it's nice and tight, and then just go a little bit more, and that's all you want to do. You don't want to go until it's over tight, because you can break screws, you can strip out threads, you can make a mess. So try not to go too tight, but certainly tight enough to hold everything down. So anyway, everything's done. We degreased the scope, we put the rings on, we got that lined up, we got it right up against the recoil lug. Everything should be good. We're going to take a look through the scope, make sure it's nice and level. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Alright, so the next step will be zeroing in a rifle. I might take you along on that, but I think you've all done that one before. So, besides, my process isn't that good. I use the old chase the zero across the paper move, because without a really good rest, when you're zeroing a rifle, you have to account for the rifle moving every time. So the old method of moving your crosshairs to the point of impact is not going to work with an air rifle like this unless you've got a real expensive rest. Anyway, that's installing a scope on an air rifle. I hope you learned something. I know I always learn something when I do these jobs. And I want to thank you again for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. And if you haven't done it already, please subscribe. Hit the bell if you'd like to be reminded of future videos. And by all means, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this one. Thanks again, folks. Have a great day. Now what we're going to do is try to get the proper eye relief on the scope, and we have to do that by pulling the the rifle out of the rifle rest and just shouldering it as you would normally to fire it. Scope's on backwards, folks.